The fall lasted only seconds, but to Mark it felt like an eternity. Wind rushed past his face as he plummeted into the vast pit, the alien crowd's roars fading above him. Their gleeful chittering at his impending doom only fueled his rage. Asterisk, so this is how they treat diplomats now, asterisk, he thought bitterly. His mission was supposed to be simple. Establish first contact with the reptilian Drax species who had recently discovered Earth's transmissions. Instead, he found himself declared the sacrifice during what he thought was a welcoming ceremony. Mark hit the ground hard, rolling to absorb the impact as his military training kicked in. Pain shot through his shoulder, but nothing seemed broken. The pit floor was covered in sand and bones, hundreds of them bleached white under the three suns that shone through the massive dome above. A low rumble shook the ground beneath him. "Human," a voice boomed from speakers hidden somewhere in the arena walls. "You have been chosen to prove your species' worth, defeat the Guardian, and earn your freedom. Fail, and your death will confirm what we already know, that humans are merely prey." Mark rose to his feet, scanning the arena. It was roughly circular, about 100 meters across, with sheer walls rising 30 meters to the spectator platforms, where thousands of Drax watched eagerly. No visible exits, no weapons. A section of wall began to rise, revealing darkness beyond. Two massive, glowing eyes appeared in the shadows. The ground trembled with each step as the creature emerged. It was magnificent and terrifying. 20 meters of rippling muscle covered in obsidian scales that gleamed like polished metal. Massive wings folded against its back, a crown of horns adorned its elongated head. And when it opened its jaws, rows of teeth like daggers glistened with saliva. This was no mere animal. Intelligence burned in those ancient eyes. The dragon, Mark couldn't think of it as anything else, tilted its head, studying him with what seemed like curiosity. "Begin," the announcer declared, and the crowd erupted in excited shrieks. The dragon's chest expanded, and Mark dove behind a boulder just as a jet of white-hot flame erupted from its maw. The heat was so intense he could feel his exposed skin blistering. Asterisk think, damn it, asterisk Mark urged himself. Outrunning it was impossible, outfighting it, laughable, but outsmarting it. Humans had always been good at that. Mark took inventory. His uniform, boots, belt, and the small emergency kit hidden in his boot that his captors had missed. Inside, a fire starter, tiny multi-tool, emergency beacon, useless this far from Earth, and a small medical kit with painkillers and a coagulant spray. The dragon circled, seemingly content to toy with its prey. Mark studied its movements, noting how it favored its right side and how its scales overlapped, thicker near vital areas, thinner at the joints. From his hiding spot, Mark ripped strips from his uniform and wrapped them around rocks, creating makeshift projectiles. Using a fire starter, he lit one and hurled it away from his position. The distraction worked. The dragon pounced on the flaming cloth, giving Mark precious seconds to sprint to another hiding spot. He needed to get close, an impossible task against a creature that could incinerate him with a breath. Unless, Mark examined the pit more carefully. Near the wall was a depression filled with a dark liquid. Oil? Some kind of fuel for the dragon's flame, perhaps. A plan formed. Desperate, probably suicidal, but better than waiting to be eaten. The dragon roared in frustration, its tail lashing violently as it lost track of its prey. Mark took a deep breath and ran, zigzagging between rock formations toward the depression. The crowd's collective gasp alerted the dragon. It spun with surprising agility and launched another blast of flame. Mark dove, feeling the heat scorch his back, but kept moving. He reached the pool and plunged his hands into the liquid, thick and oily as he'd hoped. Quickly coating his uniform, he prepared for the final gambit. "Hey," he shouted, standing in the open, "is this the best your world has to offer?" The dragon's eyes narrowed. It stalked forward, wings partially extended to block any escape. "Humans aren't prey," Mark called out, voice steady despite his terror. "We're the apex predators of our world. We've hunted creatures like you to extinction." The dragon reared back, drawing in a massive breath. This was it. Mark would either prove his point or become ash. As the flame erupted, Mark dropped and rolled beneath it, using the momentum to slide between the dragon's forelegs. The oil on his clothes ignited, but instead of burning him, it created a barrier that bought him precious seconds. He reached the dragon's underbelly and drove his multi-tool into the softer scales there with all his strength. The blade barely penetrated, but the dragon howled, more in surprise than pain, and reared up. Mark clung to the embedded tool as the dragon thrashed. Using the scales as handholds, he began climbing higher, seeking the one spot he suspected might be vulnerable. The crowd had fallen silent, watching in disbelief as the tiny human scaled the raging beast. Mark reached the dragon's throat. Here, the scales were smaller, more flexible to allow the creature to breathe fire. He pulled out the coagulant spray from his med kit, designed to instantly clot human blood, but who knew what it might do to dragon chemistry? As the dragon prepared another blast, Mark sprayed the entire canister directly into one of its flame ducts. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The dragon choked, its fire blocked by the rapidly hardening foam. It clawed at its throat, eyes bulging in panic. Mark jumped clear as the beast thrashed, landing hard on the sand. He'd expected to die, but the dragon wasn't attacking, it was struggling to breathe. After long moments, the dragon collapsed, wheezing. It wasn't dead, but it was defeated, unable to produce its flame. Silence above was deafening until one Drax began to tap its claws on the railing. The sound spread until the entire arena thundered with it, their version of applause. The same voice from before announced that human has prevailed, the guardian yields. Mark stood tall, despite his burns and bruises, and stared directly at the royal box where the Drax leaders watched. "I didn't come here to fight," he called out. "I came to talk. But understand this. Humans don't make good sacrifices. We make formidable allies, or terrible enemies, your choice." As guards descended to retrieve him, Mark locked eyes with the dragon one last time. There was something new there, not hatred but respect. Sometimes understanding began with combat. Today, humanity had made its first real impression on the galaxy. It wouldn't be the last.